Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Inspire Europe Plus webinar offering remote fellowships for at-risk researchers. We're really happy to welcome so many of you here today. Next slide, please. My name is Alison Morris-Rowe. I'm a Policy and Project Officer at the European University Association. Before I hand you over to the chair and before she kicks off this webinar, I just wanted to go through some housekeeping rules with you and then to present the Inspire Europe Plus project to you. So first of all, just to introduce you to this platform, there are three ways that you can interact. So there is the chat function on the right-hand side for you. So here is where you can greet people. So we would kindly ask you to do this now. Please say hello, tell us where you're from. If you have any technical issues, you can let us know here as well. Or if you have any other remarks or comments or links that you might like to share with us, this is the place to do that. However, if you have specific questions for our speakers today, please put them in the Q&A box. And please note that these questions have to be approved by our technical staff before they are launched. We might not get through all your questions, but rest assured that the speakers will try to respond to them in writing as well. So please have a look under the Q&A tab and see if your question has been responded to that way. You may have seen upon entry that there is in fact a poll waiting for you. So I would invite you to click on the poll tab and to answer the question here on whether or not you have any experience with remote fellowship programs. So that's it for the three different ways to interact. Next slide, please. So as I said at the beginning, this is an Inspire Europe Plus webinar. Next slide, please. So the Inspire Europe Plus project is an initiative to support, promote and integrate researchers at risk in Europe. It's a 3-year project. It started in September of this year and will run until August 2025. It's an EU-funded project involving 7 partners and 3 associate partners. Next slide, please. So as you can see, here are the Inspire Europe Plus partners. The lead partner is Scholars at Risk Europe, who are located in Maynooth University in Ireland. And the other consortium members are here on the slide. So this webinar has been coordinated by 3 of the consortium partners. So that's Scholars at Risk Europe, the European University Association, who is hosting this webinar today, and the University of Gothenburg, who is chairing this webinar. Next slide, please. And we do have 3 associate partners as well, as you can see on the screen. Next slide, please. So what does the Inspire Europe Plus project actually want to do? Well, in fact, it is a follow-on project from the Inspire Europe project, which was also a 3-year project running from 2019 until 2022. So building on the work undertaken by the Inspire Europe project, the original one, Inspire Europe Plus proceeds from the view that excellence in research depends upon free and open scientific debate and requires a diversity of perspectives and methodologies to flourish. So, over the course of this project, the Inspire Europe Plus partners will coordinate activities across Europe to support researchers at risk. So this includes direct guidance through webinars and trainings, building institutional capacity and preparedness for support, advising national level initiatives, informing European policy and raising awareness to diversify support for researchers at risk in Europe. So today's webinar advances that work by focusing on the very important topic of remote fellowships for researchers at risk. So I really hope you enjoy today's webinar, and without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to our chair, Carolina Catoni from the University of Gothenburg. The floor is yours, Carolina.
Thank you very much, Alison. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. As Alison said, my name is Carolina Catoni, and I'm joining you from the University of Gothenburg in Sweden, one of the partners in the Inspire Europe Plus project. So I will lead you through today's webinar. The theme for today is remote fellowships. And over the years, remote fellowships have been mentioned as an alternative way to hosting on campus. It could be used to reach scholars that for some reason cannot travel, but it could also be a way for hosting institutions who don't have the capacity to host on campus to host in another way. And I see from the poll that Alison mentioned previously that some of you do have the experience of remote fellowship programs, but the majority of you don't. So if you haven't already answered the poll, please go and do so in order to give us a hint about your experience. So today we will hear from there's three very different types of remote initiatives. And we also have a scholar with us today that have taken part in one of the initiatives. So the outline is that I will shortly introduce you to our four speakers, and they will present their initiatives, and then we will come together in a joint discussion. So in that discussion, please join us and contribute to the Q&A function. And we will also be asking you to contribute through the chat by specific questions later on in the discussion. So please stay active and contribute to the discussion. So I would now like to introduce you to our four speakers. Our first speaker is Dr. Jennifer Straub. She is currently an assistant professor in the Faculty of Education at Wilfrid Laurier University in Canada. She is a proud Métis and bilingual French and English educator and researcher. She holds a PhD in Education Studies from the University of New Brunswick, and her research interests include French as a second language, social studies, citizenship, and Indigenous education in initial teacher education programs. So nice to have you with us, Jennifer. Our second speaker will be Mehmet. Mehmet is a visiting researcher at Wilfrid Laurier University. He completed his PhD in curriculum and instruction. He was the project manager of 3 national-wide projects and worked as an expert for the European Union. Thank you for joining us, Mehmet. And our third speaker is Florian Kostal. Florian is the head of the Global Responsibility Unit at the Center for International Cooperation at Freie Universität Berlin. He is the founder of Academics in Solidarity, a transnational peer-to-peer mentoring program for displaced scholars. And so thank you very much, Florian, that you are here with us today. And our last speaker will be Daniel Ladani. Daniel Ladani is the coordinator of the Danish SAR section. He's a global mobility consultant at the University of Copenhagen in Denmark, and is the co-coordinator at the local SAR program within the University of Copenhagen. He works with immigration and researcher mobility on a daily basis and has a background in law. Thank you very much to all four of you for joining us today. So I will now give the word to Jennifer, who will be our first speaker. And Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much and welcome. Bonjour à tout le monde. Bienvenue. My name is Dr. Jennifer Straub, and I'm from Wilfrid Laurier University. And before we begin, I really would like to acknowledge the land that Laurier is on. It's part of the Haldimand Tract territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee people. It's part of the Dish with One Spoon Treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people, and symbolizes the agreement to share, protect our resources, and not engage in conflict. So this first slide demonstrates our commitment not only to our scholars, but also is part of our belief system in Canada that we do not engage in conflict, and supporting, protecting, and promoting international scholars really is at the root of what we believe as an institution. Even in our promotional material, we have "You belong here" and "Inspiring lives" as mottos, really, to encourage students to come to Laurier. But I realize that this is part of the ethos of the institution. So we really excel at creating a culture of engagement that develops the whole person and builds reciprocal community relationships. And the investment in the Scholar at Risk program exemplifies this. And we don't see this program as the university helping a scholar. We see it as them helping us, and it's a partnership and it's a relationship. Next slide, please. Now, while Laurier's initiatives with the Scholar at Risk program is new, we really began this spring. What I wanted to bring to light is that it is part of a culture at the institution. So Laurier's International Students Overcoming War was started in 2013, and since then we collect $8 for a scholarship levy to fund tuition for students who are from countries that have experienced war. And I think that's part of that commitment. So over the years, we've brought 23 students to our university, and now we're extending it to our visiting scholar program. Next slide, please. So our program, which is fully remote, allows the scholar to remotely engage with academia after being pushed outside of the university space. So this year, in our first year, and we hope to have more, we have 2 from Ukraine, 2 scholars from Afghanistan, and 1 scholar from Turkey. Next slide, please. Now, the application process that we have at Laurier, there are 2 routes. One is a nomination from the Scholar at Risk program, and we also have an application process where a faculty member may recommend. Now, in our situation this year, the candidate was brought from the Scholar at Risk program, and I received a letter in July. And July is a time where most people take their vacations in Canada, and it was just an email. And sometimes we, as academics, we get quite a few emails, so we may not pay attention to every single one we get. This one in particular resonated with me, and I realized that I needed to take action. As a professor who teaches citizenship, we always tell our pre-service teachers, either you're part of the solution or you're part of the problem. And when we have an opportunity to act, it's important that we have that social engagement and that we engage. So putting money where my mouth was, I approached the vice president academic, who was absolutely on board, and also my dean of education, to say, currently in Ontario, there are budget deficits. Universities are making cuts. And so for them to engage financially to support a scholar is an extension of, and we really just have to justify it. And I asked them, how can we not do this? Because this relationship helps to build the teachers in our care, in our teacher education program, to be better aware of some of the situations that exist outside of Canada. And this relationship helps build stronger teachers who then are better prepared to serve students that come from other countries. In Canada, we're very fortunate to be able to accept many refugees, and we need teachers that have that awareness. And through this partnership, it's been incredible that our students have been able to work with Dr. Mehmet and hear from him and experience through his eyes some of the challenges that other citizens exhibit and experience throughout the world. Next slide, please. Now, the eligibility for our program in particular is that you really do need the support, and we want to engage in remote opportunities. And in this piece, we asked Dr. Mehmet, what are some of the things that you would like to engage in? What is your research area? So it just happened that my background is social studies. Another colleague of mine, Artavan Azadarad, is also actively involved in looking at counter narratives and pursuing initiatives that help underrepresented groups. And so he too is part of this initiative. And so we have this dialogue. He will be presented to graduate students as well. And it really is working together. It is not us dictating. It is definitely a partnership, and I would extend a friendship. Next slide, please. So the terms for our institution is that we accept a visiting scholar for 2 consecutive academic terms. It is non-renewable. We have internet web access. Sometimes one of the challenges, something as simple as time zones. We have a range of license agreements for third parties providing access to online collections. So this allows the visiting scholar to have access to all of the resources that are held at the institution. It is a mutual interest that we can work on collaborative research projects, which we're doing. The candidate does receive $10,000 Canadian. Now, this is a nominal amount, and we recognize that this does not support a visiting scholar for all of their expenses, obviously. It is simply a bridge. It's a springboard to allow them to continue their work. The one important thing is that they can identify themselves as a visiting researcher. However, it's really important that they recognize that they have no other rights or privileges as a formal appointment at Laurier. So I'm really excited to hear from Dr. Mehmet so that he can share his perspective. This has been a very eye-opening experience for both myself as well as our students at Laurier. And we hope that other institutions take the opportunity to create these partnerships, because it really is a reciprocal endeavor. Thank you very much for your time. Merci beaucoup. On prend les questions en français et en anglais, in English and in French, questions during that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Thank you. Very exciting. And we will get back to you, but I would first like to welcome Mehmet to do his presentation, and then we will get back to both of you at the same time after his presentation. So Mehmet, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, bonjour. First of all, I really want to thank you for this opportunity. I'm so glad to share my story and to raise awareness about the situation, scholars at risk. Basically, I want to talk about the period situation. 6 years ago, I had a great life. I was teaching at university, doing my research and leading two nationwide projects and collaborating with one European Union project. I was mentoring my graduate students, and I had a very structured research agenda. I had a good house, good life, economic stability, and good social stature in my society. Finally, I was dreaming a great future for myself and for my family. But one night, everything changed. After the coup attempt in 2016, thousands of scientists were expelled from universities and hundreds more were arrested. Next slide, please. Next one, please. Yes, as you see here, 136,000 more than public servants, such as academicians, teachers, judges, doctors, military officers, and policies, they were fired and have been banned to working in public sector permanently. 5,247 of them were academicians from 117 state universities. They lost their positions, and also more than 15 graduate students or graduate assistants, they were lost their positions too. According to the Interior Minister, more than 500,000 citizens were prosecuted. 261,000 have been detained, and more than 90,000 have been arrested without providing any evidence related to criminal behaviors. And they include pregnant women and more than 700 babies. They are still in jail right now. In this process, those who had the opportunity to go abroad had to immigrate to various countries, especially in the European countries, and they seek asylum and refugee status in these countries. Next slide, please. How I learned this opportunity is that when I fled from my country, I met some of the scholars in another country, and my colleagues told me that there is an institution called Scholar at Risk, and which is assisting scholars who have to left the countries. And I applied Scholar at Risk and sent related documents to them maybe 2.5 years ago. And after 6 months, I received an approval. I received an email about approval of my application. But it takes 2 years to get this position for me. So I had to wait more than 2 years. And this summer, I received another email from Scholar at Risk that about this position and was asking me whether I am interested in this position or not. And I replied that yes, I am interested in, because I need some hope to continue my academic career. Next slide, please. And I want to explain why I decided to take part of this program. Before that, I want to tell you a well-known story. You have already known about the starfish story. One day, a man was walking along the beaches and noticed that a young boy picking up something and throwing it into the ocean. And he was surprised and he asked the young boy, "Young man, what are you doing?" And the young man replied, "Throwing starfish back into the ocean. If I don't throw them back, they will die." The man smiled and said, "Don't you realize that there are miles and miles of beaches and maybe thousands of starfish there? You cannot make any change. You cannot make any difference." After listening politely, the boy bent down and picked up another starfish and threw into the sea. And smiled and replied the man, "I made a difference to that one." Basically, I am the starfish in this story. Uh, thanks for Jennifer and Ardawan. They accepted my application and throw me the ocean academia again. And now I continue. I'm um, continued. I returned to academic life again. Otherwise, I was waiting to die academically because after 5 years, 6 years without teaching, etc., you feel desperate. Next slide, please. And Jennifer and Ardawan, we met several times, and we spoke about the situation. They invited me to their meetings and gave me some opportunity to provide workshop to students and teachers. Also, they invited me to teach in their graduate and undergraduate classes. Basically, I feel I return to academia again. So I start my hope, and again, I feel the hope. If you see in this picture, I was in the darkness and there was no light. But this opportunity with the Laurier University, it opened me a window or a door to escape from the darkness. Now I have hope again. And I feel belonging to academia. And now Jennifer and Ardawan and I submitted a research proposal to one international symposium in United States, and we are collaborating. We are not. I'm not a scholar in that university, but also I feel I was welcomed uh, by friendly, and I have several friends in Canada right now, and basically at the end they provide me some economic support, but the most important part is providing hope, because otherwise, I mean, you feel so desperate and you start to give up. I mean, you may give up. Now, my last word is that there are thousands of scholars outside waiting one help. It might be small for your universities, but it definitely changed their lives. And I hope in the future we will see more positions, more opportunity for the scholars at risk. And I would like to thank again to Jennifer and Ardavan and other people who are behind of these positions. Thank you again. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mehmet. Thank you both for sharing your story in a very poetic and touching way, but also to give us the insights of the how big of a difference this program has made for you. So I hear you both speaking about partnerships, friendships, a sense of belonging and hope. Um, but if you look into the biggest benefits of the program, apart from the belonging and hope part, which I understand it is might be the most important one, what do you see as the biggest benefits of the visiting scholar program? We can start with Jennifer, maybe.
I think one of the benefits for me as a relatively new scholar is they call it my role as a mentor, but in fact, I'm learning from Mehmet. And so I have an opportunity to have a mentor in him to learn about um, issues related to citizenship that are real and authentic. And so I think that's the piece that Canadian universities and all other universities need to recognize, that this is not us helping them, but them helping our institutions. As I mentioned, many of our universities are underfunded, and we have this opportunity for a nominal fee, if in the big picture, to get this international experience and expertise to our institutions. So I think if more universities see it from that perspective, they would be on board to continue the partnership.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Thank you. I do agree with you. And Mehmet, would you like to add on to that as well when it comes to the big difference that this kind of program make?
Yes, thank you, Jennifer, for your good works. I really appreciate, and I learned too much from you and Ardavan and other people in the coalition. Basically, I'm looking for the full side of the glass, and I mean, as Jennifer mentioned, I find collaboration opportunities. Right now, I'm still continue. We are doing a research about together about the common points, citizenship, and also the other benefit was that I am allowed to use. I can reach the databases by through the university's library. So this is the most important part for scholars to reach out the current thesis, current publications to continue their research, and this is another opportunity. And I mean, again, I feel productive because I mean these scholars are just in Turkey more than 5,000, maybe more. They are human capital, and they are wasting right now. They are working in like delivery companies, etc., but they spent their years for academia, for their field. But now nobody is using this expertise. I met too many people, too many professors. They are like cardiac professors or sociology professor. I mean, they are good people. They have like well-known people in their field, but now they are not working. So the other opportunity is to returning this human capital to academia.
Thank you very much, Mehmet. It has been wonderful to hear about your mutual learning in this visiting scholar program, and we are looking forward to discuss further with you as well. But we will now leave the floor to our third speaker. So, Florian, I would like to welcome you on screen, and please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Carolina. Thank you for inviting me to this interesting webinar about remote scholarships for at-risk scholars. Maybe, for a little bit of an introduction, I'm representing here Freie Universität Berlin, and Freie Universität Berlin is currently hosting 30 at-risk scholars. It was also the first German university that was member of the Scholars at Risk team. In addition, we have a transnational mentoring program that is based at Freie Universität Berlin, where we have currently more than 130 members. So displaced scholars from all over Germany, not only those based at Freie Universität Berlin, but also based at other German universities and other universities in Europe. And today what I'm going to talk about is a format that we especially put in place in a emergency situation, which was the emergency situation of Ukraine, the war in Ukraine. So it's a new format. It is also a format that we only had this year. And we are now discussing how we can extend it. So this is why this discussion about remote fellowships is very interesting for us. I think actually when you look at the landscape of support programs for at-risk researchers in Germany, remote fellowships, emergency remote fellowships are sort of the missing link, because so far we have, for example, 2 or 3 year fellowships which are provided by the Philip Schwartz initiative of the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation. We have other fellowships from the Berlin-based Einstein Foundation, but this remote scholarship fellowships are something that I think are missing. And I would like to explain you this briefly in setting out what we did in April when the war in Ukraine started. We supported students who were based at Freie Universität, for example, by extending their stay because they could not return to their home country. We provided also support for students from Ukraine who had to flee their country and who wanted to continue their studies at Freie Universität Berlin. If they qualified for study programs, we extended, for example, the deadline for registration, and we tried to bring them in the regular programs. And we also put in place language courses. Currently, we are having 115 students preparing to study here, but as most of the bachelor programs at Freie Universität Berlin are taught in German, the language is a very important factor. Now, when it comes to scientists, to scholars, the initial step was that we, from the international office, we provided special funds for our departments. They are getting each year a certain amount of money of the international office in order to invite guest scholars for a certain time. And we increased this amount with a special dedication for scholars from Ukraine, but also dissident scholars from Russia and Belarus. So first of all, the idea was actually that those scientists who had already come to Germany, especially to Berlin, could have like this the opportunity to have a scholarship for 3 months, a relatively small amount of money, only 1,500 euros, but it was really meant as an emergency scholarship to host them for 3 months at Freie Universität Berlin. Now, how did the remote scholarship come about? This was really based on a faculty initiative. It was then a professor who was in a very direct contact with another professor at Lviv University in Ukraine. She said, why don't we offer also remote scholarships? The situation in Ukraine is the following, that not everybody can leave the country, especially men have to stay. And we also have a lot of internally displaced scholars within Ukraine we should help. And the international office agreed then that the departments also nominate scholars who are still based in Ukraine for such a remote scholarships. So overall, with the emergency scholarship that we put in place, 50 scholars could be supported, and 50% of them, so 25 of them, were hosted at Freie Universität Berlin, and the other 25 were supported with these remote scholarships. So as I said before, a limited amount of money, 1,500 euros per month, and for a length of 3 months. And the prime condition to qualify actually for this scholarship was that there has to be an established link with Freie Universität Berlin through a professor, through a previous cooperation, etc. So when it comes to the selection, of course, this was very much based on the contact between the professor here at Freie Universität and the professor in Ukraine. And those who were given out these scholarships, just to give some examples, for example, in the first round, these were mainly faculty members from Kiev University and from Kharkiv University. And in a second step, once they had the opportunity to flee, for example, from the occupied city of Mariupol. These were basically historians from the city of Mariupol who benefited from this scholarship. What was very important for giving out this scholarship was actually a very intense cooperation with a research center in Lviv, who could serve also as a contact point to identify these persons and also to support them. Now, currently, we are in the process of evaluating the scholarships. So we also want to assess what was the outcome, etc. My first impression is what is very important, but it was also very much needed in such a situation, is this kind of humanitarian support, right? So from a 3-month scholarship, you cannot expect publications, a joint research project, etc. But in terms of helping someone to get settled in a new place, in a new research environment, this 3 months scholarship is very beneficial, and this is what it is meant for. And this is also coming back, and also to conclude, because my time is already over, to my initial remark, why I said this is sort of the missing link, because what we have seen in the past crisis, for example, if it is about Afghanistan or also Belarus, in an emergent situation is also sometimes very complicated to bring out the scholar from its home country to Germany. And it comes with a lot of responsibility as well in terms of what happens afterward if even a 2-year scholarship is, etc., over. So I think this remote scholarship for a very short time in an emergency situation are very helpful. Still, now we have to think how we can sort of generalize it from the context, because of course, a remote scholarship for someone getting hosted, for example, at a research center in Lviv is something different than, for example, supporting a scholar in Afghanistan, where you might not find this infrastructure for a successful remote scholarship. This is how I would like to conclude, and I'm very much looking forward for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Florian. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for all that very valuable initiative, and that we are also looking forward to discuss more in depth. I also wanted to ask you a follow-up question when it comes to your engagement, your big engagement, and your initiative called Academics in Solidarity, which and also teaching in exile, which I see behind you on the pamphlet. And I know that this is also something that has been used as a mentoring scheme in neighboring countries, or countries neighbor in the scholars' neighboring countries. But how has this mentoring program, how has it been used, and what has it been used for, mainly? Could you say something about that? Because of course, a mentoring scheme could be used in very many different ways. It could be used in like a personal support and guidance, but also when it comes to support in academia, and when it comes to publications and so on. So could you maybe, we are going towards the end of your talk, but of course, just a few minutes on this, please.
Yeah, I mean, the main purpose really of Academics in Solidarity is the research, the reintegration into the research environment. So this mentoring, it can of course, include personal advice, but it is mainly really, I mean, at the heart of this mentoring process is a matching process, where we try to bring together researchers which are very close in their research interest. Because what we finally aim at is that they do a joint application for a long-term funding project. So this is basically the main aim, because we think that despite the good opportunities for supporting researchers, it is very important that they apply for the so-called regular grants. If it is a DFG grant in Germany, if this is an ERC, etc. I think, I mean, the German research environment and many of the European research environments are that competitive that in order to have a long-term prospect within academia, you sort of have to be successful in these regular grants. And this is what we try to achieve through this matching process and then the training that comes with it and giving out small grants in order to establish yourself within this competitive environment. Yeah.
Thank you, Florian. I'm sure that we will get back also to that in the joint discussion. But now I would like to move up geographically up north again, and I would give the floor to Daniel Ladani from the University of Copenhagen, who is our last speaker. So Daniel, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. I'm happy to be here to tell you a little about the SARU Fellowship in Denmark, an initiative that was initiated with the invasion in Ukraine. The Danish universities and the Scholars at Risk Denmark section collectively decided to apply for funding from three major foundations in Denmark to help researchers displaced from Ukraine, but also still in Ukraine, as Florian mentioned. As we all know, it's not everybody who can leave the country, and some have different reasons for staying. We actually succeeded in applying and getting grants, 5 million each from the three foundations, so a total of 15 million Danish kroners, which is very, very, very nice and generous. So we had a lot of work administratively to set up a call to receive applications for a fellowship in Denmark and the remote fellowships. In the start, we were a bit afraid if we would receive enough applications, but we received many applications. So there's been a lot of work to actually look at these applications and see if there could be a match. And it's still in process, still a work in process. We're not done yet. We have decided on who we can give the fellowship in Denmark, which is employment, but more importantly for this webinar today, how we would give the remote scholarships to researchers in Ukraine. And I would like to explain a bit more about where we are currently in the process, and also what challenges we have had during these couple of months with working with this. And as we all know, remote scholarships is a huge help for these researchers in Ukraine, because obviously they cannot continue their research for reasons, important reasons, like if there has been bombings or simply that it's not possible to pay out their salary. So, and Danish, you can see the currency in Denmark, you can is like Danish kroners. It is very what can you say? Sorry, I'm just yeah. So the Danish remote stipend, it's a lot of money in Ukraine for these researchers. So for us, we had to figure out how would it make sense, and how much should these stipends be, and how many hours, and what kind of work can they do. So we had a lot of meetings in the Danish SAR section and discussions about how many hours should a grant be, and how much can we pay out. And we decided that it would be up to 50 hours of work for a remote stipend, and this could be in exchange of a lecture or a seminar or a teaching with a department within a Danish university. And like it would be yeah, sorry, I'm a bit nervous. But anyway, so these were some example of the activities included with the remote scholarship scheme. And we looked into whether it was possible to pay out money to Ukraine and transfer money, since we cannot employ these researchers and have to pay it as a grant. Then we have to look into this, and it was possible. So now we're actually trying to figure out how we can choose these people and collaborate within the Danish SAR section to choose the candidates. So all the universities has worked together to find the right matches. And the problem here and the challenge has been that we, as an administrative staff, we don't really have the knowledge as they do in the research environments. So for us, it has been hard to find out who can we talk to and how should we spread the word and who do we need to reach out to actually get in touch with the right persons that would make sense to collaborate with. And yeah, that's been tricky. But what we have done is that we have taken all the applications individually and done a lot of research in finding a right match. And we have a long Excel sheet with an overview on what kind of academic background the applicants has in Ukraine and where we can see a match with a Danish university, either at the University of Copenhagen or the DTU or Roskilde University or Aarhus. And it has also been quite problematic or challenging to decide how we should do it in detail. For instance, Aarhus University has maybe proposed that it can also be like research work and not just one seminar or one teaching session. And that's why we decided that we would say 50 hours max. So there's more flexibility because it's hard to get an academic match precisely, and it's more to help these researchers in Ukraine so they can get food on the table and also to keep their network alive. So a good advice for others thinking about hosting or funding remote scholarships is to maybe in the call for application to in these types of situations try to decide on in advance, like how many hours should the grant be and how much work, and maybe the frame of how it should be is always from our side a good idea to think about before starting. And it's been hard because we've been learning by doing, and it's been very hectic and with the time. So we're still learning and still in the process of figuring out what will be the best. And now we're actually trying to give a remote stipend and contacting these people. So hope we can help them. And what can I mention more? We can also recommend that if there is some kind of reference with the department in advance, then that would be very nice. But obviously, it's hard for researchers in Ukraine to have a contact in Denmark. So there's a lot of administrative work from our side to find out if we can help them. It takes up a lot of resources. That's what I can say about that. But we also help them to get in touch with the relevant people, and that's our job to get in contact and set it up. And then hopefully the department or research environment, they will say yes, and then they will set up a meeting and make a plan for what the remote scholarship has to include and what service the researcher can offer us. And then in exchange, we will pay to Ukraine and transfer the money to them so they can continue their research and also have food on the table and take care of the families. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you. And I think that since time is running and we are having so many interesting questions coming up in the chat, that I would welcome all speakers to the floor again, including Mehmet. Very good to see you all again, and thank you all for your contributions. So we will now enter the joint discussion, and of course, in the audience, you're welcome to continue to put your questions in the queue by using the Q&A function. You also had the possibility to vote for different questions if you see a question that is already posed that you consider to be important, and we will answer some of them now in the discussion. But we're also interested to hear from the experience from the audience. So the audience, you are also welcome to to answer questions by using the chat function. And what we are interested in hearing about is, what do you see as the biggest benefit of a remote scheme, and what are the biggest challenges that you see? So please put your answers in the chat box. Thank you very much. But if we look to our speakers now, we had a question in the chat. We have a question in the chat coming up regarding. It is like this. Before the seminar, I wondered very much about remote fellowship, and now I realize that obviously the remote scholar has to be in a safe space, which is, of course, a very important question. And I would like for us to focus a little bit on this one, if you have any thoughts on that. And as a follow-up question to that, we also have a question regarding if we are offering remote opportunities for those scholars that are in the EU already, but that are originally not from EU countries. But if we first take the first question on remote fellowships and about the need to create a safe space around the scholar while they are participating in a remote fellowship. So I was wondering who would like to start to answer that question. You can just raise a hand if you're ready. Do you have any experience from that, Florian, for example?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit. I have some experience, but not a lot yet, because this is very much something I think that is still under, let's say, evaluation. But what we can say from the experience with Ukraine is that it is very important to have an institution there who coordinates with us. Yeah, otherwise we from Berlin we cannot take any guarantee for someone who takes a remote fellowship in Ukraine itself. And this is also why many donors, for example, they stay away of giving out remote fellowships. Imagine, for example, the situation in Afghanistan. How could you give a guarantee? So it is very important that you have another institution, a partner institution that you can rely on, that you can coordinate these efforts with. Because what is important also for the researcher is, of course, the personal contact, right? And this is something you cannot easily establish through through the internet, etc. You have to have a person sur place, which helps, right? If it comes to accommodation, etc. Yeah, and I would say the space is relatively safe. Yeah, but also when we host a researcher in Germany, the place is relatively safe. It's not absolutely safe, right? I mean, we have specific embassies of some countries where researchers are at risk. We have to deal with the question of anonymity if we host at risk. So there's a lot of things, and this cannot be completely guaranteed when at the same time we would like to have a open research environment. So I think even in Germany, the space is not completely safe, even if we try to do the best.
Thank you, Florian. Jennifer, please go ahead.
I would like to add, I think when it comes to protecting in a remote fellowship, one of the key pieces is identity and location. And we as an institution have learned and have had to say explicitly, no, you can't use our scholar at risk's name. You can't identify where the scholar is living. And these are simple things that we take for granted in a country like us in Canada, where we have the freedom. Last couple of days ago, we have the COP21, and there were some protesters who were protesting our prime minister, and he just paused, and they were able to do their Indigenous protest live, and they could do that in Canada. Whereas for us, just publishing the location and the identity of our scholar can put his life at risk or her life at risk. So these are things that we have to really undertake carefully when we agree to this partnership.
Thank you, Jennifer. I was wondering, Mehmet, if you also wanted to say something about this safe space.
Yeah, basically, we are afraid about our safety first, and thank you and Jennifer and you again about protecting us. But also, I mean, we have to like we have to think our security first. This is the most important part because our mind is full busy of the security, and maybe we are working just 10% for academia. Other percent, 90% goes to security and other funding stuff. But I mean, if we find some positions, I saw too many questions here. There are too many scholars who are at risk, and they are looking for an escape route. Basically, I hope other universities in Europe and American or Canadian universities open and funded this kind of positions to provide a safe gateway, basically. I mean, the safe place, it can be, I mean, as Flora mentioned, everywhere is not absolute safe for anyone. So we should create a safe space by ourselves to use internet carefully and to use other stuff carefully. I mean, these are the main points for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mehmet. And I also wondered if we could devote some time to because we mentioned earlier this question about the remote opportunities for scholars that are in the EU but that are not originally from EU countries. And Florian and Daniel, your schemes that are directly towards scholars from Ukraine, are those schemes also open for scholars that have that are displaced within Europe? I think I might have lost you. Do you see
Yeah.
me again? Am I
Yeah,
back?
I'm here
Yes.
again. Yes.
Sorry, did you hear my question? Yes.
Most of it. Most of
Okay,
it.
I will repeat. Very sorry about that. So the question was regarding the remote schemes for Ukrainian scholars that both the Freie University Berlin and the University of that SAR Denmark is coordinating. Are those open also for scholars that are displaced within Europe, within the EU?
If I may start.
Please.
Sure, thanks. So we actually had that talk at a meeting at the Danish SAR section. We talked about this, and we actually received applications from displaced Ukrainian researchers in European countries. And we had the discussion, and we decided collectively that we want to stick with researchers in Ukraine for a remote scholarship because we want this money to go to Ukraine because they need it there. It's important because these other displaced researchers has other opportunities or networks they can use. So we wanted to stick with researchers in Ukraine, and we actually had that talk. So our remote SARU fellowship is specifically for Ukrainians in Ukraine to help as much as we can from our side.
Thank you, Daniel.
Ours is yeah, ours started with a context in Ukraine, but it is not exclusive. We, for example, 25% of those who benefited from this emergency scholarships are from Russia. However, those are not remote, but those are hosted at Freie Universität Berlin. These are dissidents from Russia. We have also one scholar from Belarus hosted at Freie Universität and one from Iran. And now the problem is that these were exclusively funds from Freie Universität Berlin, which terminated now. And in order to offer new scholarships of these kinds, remote or not, we have to get funding first to continue this program. That's the main challenge. I'm responding here also to some of the questions which were in the chat. The same holds true for example, the small grants from Academics in Solidarity. The program will continue next year, but we are still trying to find funding for some of the instruments we put in place with the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And unfortunately, it is now time to wrap up this webinar, and we can easily see that we would have needed more time. I would have wanted more time with the speakers, but also in order for us to answer all the questions. But I think we have learned a lot so far when it comes to remote fellowship schemes, and that they can be used in different ways, directed towards different countries and different types of scholars, and also that they can contain different things, both research activities and seminars and teaching. I am also happy to be that you have been able to share the need for the mutual partnership, and also that these kind of partnerships are creating a sense of belonging and hope, and that it's a way to reintegrate into academia. So I think that those are the things that we will carry with us from this webinar. I would like to thank you all that have been taking part in the webinar as a speaker or within the audience. And if you could please bring up the PowerPoint presentation so that I can say some concluding words when it comes to how to connect further with us. So you will find more information on the Inspireurope Plus website and at the SAR website. You have her information here on this slide. And I also wanted to mention something on the upcoming events within the project. So if you could, thank you very much. So this webinar will be followed by a guideline on remote fellowships in the end of February 2023. So for all of for those of you that have answered the question posed in the chat, those answers will also be important for us in the development of this guideline. Another event worth to mention is the stakeholder forum that will take part in Berlin in the end of May 2023 within the Inspireurope Plus project. So for more information and contact, please see the following website at sareurope.eu/inspireeurope/. So, and I also wanted to mention that under the resource page at the Inspireurope page, you will also find information about a previous webinar on publication strategies that was directed towards scholars, which is also worth looking at. So thank you to all our 4 speakers, and also thank you to Alison and EUE for hosting this event. And I would also like to remind you that there is an evaluation in the chat. We would very much welcome for you to click on the link in the chat in order for us to let us know what you think about this webinar. Thank you very much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.